The first twin came out screaming. Noah, 10 fingers, 10 toes, skin like polished mahogany, hair a thick black cap, eyes squeezed shut in fury. He looked exactly like David, exactly like the future we had planned. Then the silence. The second twin didn't cry. Liam slid into the world quiet, almost apologetic. And when the nurse lifted him, the room stopped breathing. Pale, translucent. A fuzz of copper-red hair catching the fluorescent light like wire, eyes the color of glacier ice. I turned to my husband. I saw a stranger staring back. And in that silence, before anyone said a word, I knew our life was over. We were the couple people photographed for brochures. David Chen, 34, Korean American, the architect whose buildings looked like prayers made concrete. Me, Sarah, 32, a labor and delivery nurse at St. Agnes, the same hospital where I now lay bleeding and bewildered. We met 5 years ago at a charity gala. He spilled wine on my dress. I laughed before I got angry. He said that was the moment he decided. We tried for 2 years, 2 years of thermometers and hope. Then, a miracle. Twins, natural conception. 1 placenta, 2 sacs. Fraternal. A statistical jackpot. David documented everything, not in an annoying way, in a desperate way. Every ultrasound photo went into a leather-bound album. He filmed me eating pickles at 2 a.m. He recorded the first kicks. He was building an archive of us, as if he needed proof that happiness was real. I never asked why. That was my first sin. I knew deep down that his perfectionism was armor. I knew he still flinched when his phone buzzed late at night, a ghost from a previous relationship where the woman had cheated for 3 years while he planned their wedding. I knew. And I let him hide it behind cameras and scrapbooks because it made him feel safe. I wanted to be his safe thing. We lived in a converted brownstone in Brooklyn. Marcus Webb, our neighbor, a personal trainer with shoulders like a linebacker, helped me assemble the cribs when David was in Seattle for a project. Marcus was gentle. He brought me ginger tea. He never asked why David was gone so much. I should have wondered why David never thanked him. The whispers started before I was wheeled out of delivery. Not from the other nurses. They were my friends. From the chart. From the way Dr. Elena Voss, our lead obstetrician, held the clipboard too tightly, her knuckles whitening. She delivered over 4,000 babies. She'd seen albinism. She'd seen mixed-race families produce every shade under the sun. But she'd never seen this. Sarah, she said, her voice too steady, we need to run some standard follow-ups. For the boys, nothing to worry about. She didn't look at Liam when she said it. She looked at David. David didn't look at anyone. He stood by the window, his back to us, his phone in his hand, not filming, just holding it, white-knuckled, like a grenade. That night, alone in the hospital room, while David walked the halls, I found it, not on purpose. I was looking for lip balm in his messenger bag. My fingers hit cold plastic, a lab envelope. Inside, a paternity test dated 4 months prior, 12 weeks gestation. Results: probability of paternity, 99.98%. He tested Noah, only Noah, the fetus with the stronger male profile, visible earlier in the NIPT blood work. He'd never told me. He'd looked me in the eye for 4 months and smiled into his camera and known that at least one of them was his. And he'd still needed to check. I put the envelope back. My hands didn't shake until he returned. We brought them home on a Tuesday. Noah slept in 3-hour cycles, predictable, warm. Liam cried differently, not louder, but wrong. A thin wail that seemed to come from somewhere far away. David held Noah constantly. He changed him. He sang to him in broken Korean, songs his grandmother had sung. He didn't touch Liam, not once, not to feed him, not to burp him. He looked at Liam the way you look at a math problem that insults your intelligence. David, I said on the 5th night, he needs to feel your hands. He feels yours, David said. He was organizing Noah's socks by color. That's enough for now. For now, he's your son. David's hand stopped. He didn't look up. Is he? The word hung between us like smoke. Then the doorbell rang. It was a social worker from the county. A routine wellness check, she said. Standard for twins with discrepant phenotypes. She used that phrase, discrepant phenotypes. She looked at our family portrait on the mantel. Me, pale and freckled. David with his dark eyes and straight black hair. And she looked at Liam. And she smiled a smile that meant she was writing things down. After she left, David went into his study and locked the door. I stood in the hallway, holding Liam, feeling Noah's cries starting up in the nursery, and I realized I was alone in my own home.
Trying to imitate his father's voice. Stay away from that spot. That's all. Exactly those words. Children notice patterns adults dismiss. I should have listened. By the second week, tiny inconsistencies began collecting in my mind. Daniel claimed he'd never visited the farmhouse before inheriting it. Yet he somehow knew he knew the attic ladder stuck, unless you pushed left first. Whenever I asked how he knew these things, he answered casually. Lucky guess. There were too many lucky guesses. Unless they weren't guesses at all. Then came Saturday. Rain hammered against the roof while Daniel drove into town for hardware supplies. Ethan and I stayed home unpacking old boxes. He disappeared into the pantry, searching for canned soup. A minute later, came the crash, followed by silence. Then, Mom! I found him kneeling beside splintered boards that had caved beneath the weight of several forgotten shelves. Cold air drifted upward from the darkness. The opening revealed rough stone steps descending farther than any crawl space should. At the bottom stood an enormous steel door. Black, ancient, locked. A heavy chain wrapped around rusted handles. My pulse quickened. This, I whispered. This can't be right. Ethan shined his phone flashlight downward. The beam disappeared into darkness before reflecting off something metallic. There really is a basement. No. I shook my head instinctively. Your father said there wasn't. Maybe he didn't know. But even as Ethan said it, neither of us believed those words. Daniel knew this house too well. The air rising from below smelled dry, not moldy, not abandoned, as though someone had opened the door recently. Ethan crouched lower. There are footprints. What? In the dust. I grabbed his shoulder before he could climb down. Don't. But not until your father gets home. He frowned. Why? Because suddenly I wasn't sure I wanted Daniel to know we'd found it. The thought appeared so naturally that it frightened me. Why would I hide something from my own husband, unless part of me already suspected the answer? That evening Daniel pulled into the driveway. The moment he walked through the kitchen door, he stopped. Not because he saw the broken floor, because he saw our faces. What happened? The pantry collapsed, I said carefully. He didn't move. His eyes slowly shifted toward the opening. For one single second, every trace of color vanished from his face. He dropped the hardware bag. Nails scattered across the floor. What? His voice cracked. Did you see? Not are you okay? Not did anyone get hurt? Only one question. What did you see? I watched him. Really watched him. His breathing. His shaking hands. The sweat appearing across his forehead. This wasn't surprise. It wasn't confusion. It looked exactly like fear. I found a door, Ethan answered. Daniel's eyes snapped toward him. You went down there? No. You didn't touch anything? No. Daniel let out a slow breath that sounded almost like relief. Then just as quickly his expression hardened. I'm calling someone tomorrow to seal that up. I stared at him. Seal it? It's dangerous. It's part of the house. It isn't anymore. His answer came too fast, too sharp, too final. That night, After Daniel fell asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The image of the chained steel door refused to leave my mind. Neither did Daniel's face. People can fake surprise. They can fake confidence. They can even fake love. But genuine fear? That flashes across a face before the mind has time to hide it. And my husband had looked terrified. Around midnight I heard the bedroom door open. Very quietly. I kept my breathing slow, pretending to sleep. Daniel slipped into the hallway. A moment later I heard soft footsteps crossing the kitchen. Then, the unmistakable sound of wood scraping against wood. The broken pantry floor. He was going back to the hidden basement. Alone. And whatever waited behind that locked steel door. Daniel was making sure it stayed there.
She closed the door and locked it. I ran the full panel, she said. Heteropaternity. The word landed like a stone. 2 different fathers. Noah is David's. Biologically, unquestionably. But Liam? She slid a folder across the desk. Liam's paternal haplotype is European. Northern European. The red hair, the blue eyes. They're not random mutations. They're inheritance. From a different man. I couldn't breathe. You're saying I slept with someone else while I was with David. I'm saying the biology is unambiguous. She looked away. I've seen this twice in my career. Both times the mother had been compromised. During a window of hyperovulation, twins conceived within 48 hours of different encounters. Compromised, I repeated. You mean raped or drunk or both? She didn't answer. That was her answer. I stood up. The room spun. You're wrong. You have to be wrong. Run it again. I ran it 4 times. Her hands were shaking now. Sarah, I need to tell you something. 20 years ago, I made a mistake. I swapped 2 babies in the NICU. I didn't realize for 6 hours. The families figured it out. But the trauma, I left that hospital. I came here. I told myself I'd never assume, never rush. But when I saw your boys, I saw a pattern. I saw a mistake waiting to happen. So I tested, and now I can't stop seeing it. She looked up, and her eyes were wet. I'm not wrong, but I might be cursed. I took Liam and Noah, and I drove. I didn't know where. I ended up at the hotel, the Ritz, room 412. I sat in the parking lot, staring at the window, trying to remember a man's face, a touch, a voice, anything. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You don't know me, but I know what happened that night. Meet me, please. The signature read, Jake, my ex, the man I dated for 3 years in my 20s, the man who'd called me worthless when I gained weight, the man who'd told me no one else would ever love me, the man with red hair. Jake looked the same. Worse, maybe. The red hair thinning. The blue eyes still sharp, still calculating. He sat across from me in a diner, stirring coffee he didn't drink. You came, he said. I came to ask if you raped me. The word made him flinch. Good. I didn't, he said. I saw you at the gala. You were wasted. I got you a cab. You dropped your purse. I took it to the hotel to keep it safe. I used the card to book the room because I didn't want you passed out in the lobby. I stayed until 3 a.m. Then I left. I called your neighbor, Marcus, to pick you up. He didn't answer, so I put you in the room and I left. Then why are you in the photo? Why is your arm around me? Because you grabbed me. Because you thought I was David. You kept saying his name. I tried to get you to let go. A stranger took the photo. I don't know who. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But biology doesn't lie. Then why did you text me? Why now? Jake looked down at his coffee. Because I saw the news. Not the news. The internet. Someone posted your family photo, the twins. And I need you to know, I had a vasectomy 2 years ago, after my divorce. I'm sterile, Sarah. I can't have kids. I couldn't be Liam's father if I wanted to be. The diner tilted. The fluorescent lights screamed. If not Jake, then who? Jake reached across the table. I pulled my hand back. There was someone else that night, he said quietly. When I left the hotel at 3, there was a man in the lobby. Asian. Expensive coat. He asked what room you were in. I told him. I thought he was your husband. He looked desperate, like he'd been running. I stood up so fast the chair fell. David had been in Seattle. His flight record said so. His hotel receipts from Seattle said so. But his company card had been at the Ritz, and Jake had just described him perfectly. I broke into David's study that night. Not broke. I knew where he hid the key, behind the photo of us at the Met, the one where I'm laughing and he's looking at me like I'm art. I found everything. The Seattle hotel receipt, dated the same night as the gala, but a different credit card. His personal card, the company card, the one used at the Ritz, had been reported stolen 4 days after the gala. David had told the bank it was lost in transit. He'd never filed a police report, flight records. He changed his return flight. He landed at JFK at 11:47 p.m., 3 hours before the hotel charge. He'd been there. He'd been in the hotel. He'd found me drunk, alone, with a red-haired man's jacket on the chair. He'd seen the photo on my phone, the blurry selfie. He'd assumed. And then, what? I kept searching. Deeper in the drawer, beneath architectural blueprints, I found a letter, handwritten, in Korean. I couldn't read it, but I knew the handwriting. Margaret Chen, David's mother. I called her at midnight. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting. Sarah, did you know David was in New York the night of the gala? A silence.
He looked directly at Ethan. What have you been doing all day? Nothing. Daniel held his gaze a second longer than necessary, then nodded. That evening dinner felt painfully normal, almost forced. Daniel talked about repainting the barn. Ethan barely spoke. Every time not the bridge. The park downstream where the water slowed and the willows hung low. She was sitting on a bench, her coat wrapped tight, staring at the current. I sat beside her. She didn't move away. Victoria told me she gave you the letter, she said. Finally. She told me about the baby, I said. Thomas. Allison's breath caught. She closed her eyes. I named him after your father, she whispered. I held him for 8 minutes. They let me hold him. He was perfect, Marcus. He had your chin. And then they took him, and I was alone, and I thought at least you were happy. At least one of us was building the life we planned. I reached for her hand. She let me take it. Her fingers were cold. I warmed them in mine, the way I had on our first date, when she had been shaking from a 40-hour shift. I wasn't happy, I said. I was functional. I married her because she found me on a bridge with a bottle and a photograph, and I was too broken to say no. I thought I was being noble. I thought I was honoring your memory by not dying, but I died anyway. I just took longer to fall. She turned to me. Her eyes were the same green, the same flecks of gold, the same way of looking at me like I was a blueprint she was still trying to understand. Why didn't you look for me? She asked. When they didn't find the body. Why didn't you search? Because Victoria told me the dive team had checked, I said. Because the police said the current was too strong. Because I was a coward who wanted the world to confirm what I already believed, that I wasn't worth coming back for. Allison shook her head. She reached up and touched my face, her thumb brushing my cheekbone. I was coming back, she said. I was always coming back. I was just late. We sat on the bench until the sun rose. We didn't kiss. We didn't make promises. We just sat there. Two people who had been torn apart by water and time, holding hands like it was the only architecture that mattered. Victoria filed the papers on a Tuesday. She didn't ask for alimony. She didn't ask for the house. She asked for Luca, and for visitation rights for me, and for the photograph of Allison that I had kept in my wallet, the one Victoria had found in my pocket on our wedding night and never mentioned. I signed everything. I didn't go to court. I didn't need to. The dissolution was quiet, civil, and final in a way that our marriage had never been. 2 weeks later, I moved into an apartment above my office. Victoria and Luca moved to her sister's place in the suburbs. I saw him on Saturdays. He was 3.5, old enough to ask why Daddy didn't live at home anymore. Young enough to accept, because sometimes daddies need 2 houses to be good daddies, as an answer. Victoria and I didn't speak about Allison. We spoke about Luca's schedule, his allergies, his fear of the dark. We were polite. We were careful. We were strangers who had once shared a bed and a lie. Then, on a Saturday in March, she called me. Her voice was different, lighter. "I'm getting married," she said. "His name is David. He's a pediatrician. At Mercy General, actually. He was there when Luca was born. He remembers you." I didn't know what to say. I stared at the wall of my apartment, at the blueprints pinned there, at the house I had been designing for 3 years, without knowing who would live in it. "I'm happy for you," I said. And I was. "I need you to know something," Victoria said. "I didn't hide the letter because I hated her. I hid it because I loved you. And love like that, it doesn't excuse what I did, but it explains it. I hope one day you'll understand the difference." She hung up. I sat in the quiet. Then I took down the blueprints. I rolled them up. I drove to the river. I had bought the land 2 months after the wedding that never happened. 5 acres by the water, where the willows dipped low enough to touch the current. I had designed the house for Allison. Open kitchen, south-facing windows, a porch where she could read medical journals and watch the sunset. I had built the foundation before I married Victoria. I had framed the walls while Luca was learning to walk. I had told myself it was a project, a distraction, a way to keep my hands busy so they didn't reach for a bottle. But I had built it for her. For the ghost I couldn't stop loving. I found Allison at the site. She was standing in the doorway, her coat buttoned wrong, her hair wet from the rain. She had a key. I had given it to her years ago before the crash, when we were still planning a life. She had kept it on a chain around her neck, even in the coma, even in the clinic, even when she thought I had thrown it away. "You built it," she said. Her voice was barely audible over the rain. "I never stopped," I said. She walked inside. The floors were bare wood. The walls were unpainted, but the windows were in, and the light came through in shafts that turned the dust into gold. She stood in the center of what would be the living room, and she turned in a slow circle. "There's a room," she said. "Upstairs. I saw it from outside. It's smaller than the others, with a window facing the willows." "It was supposed to be the nursery," I said. "For Thomas." She went very still. Then she walked to me. She didn't touch me. She just stood close enough that I could smell her shampoo. The same brand, the same scent, as if 3 years hadn't passed. "I can't give you back those 3 years," she said. "I can't give you back our son. I can't even give you back the woman I was before the crash, because she's gone. I'm harder now. I'm quieter. I'm afraid of bridges." "So am I," said. "But I can give you this," she said. "I can give you mornings. I can give you the woman I am now, if you want her. I can give you the chance to finish this house together. Not as a monument to what we lost, as a place to live. I looked at her, at the scar, at the strength, at the fear and the courage that had carried her through a coma, a loss, a return, and still left her standing in an empty house, offering me a future she wasn't sure I wanted. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the ring, the one with the fracture. I had carried it for 3 years. I had never given it to Victoria. I had never stopped carrying it. I didn't kneel. I didn't ask her to marry me. I just took her hand and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit. It had always fit. Not a proposal, I said. A promise. That I'll be here. That I'll build. That I won't be late again. She looked at the ring. She looked at me. And for the first time since the bridge, she smiled. We didn't kiss. We walked to the window. We stood there, watching the rain turn the river into something wild and new. And then my phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. A photograph. Luca, grinning, holding a newborn baby wrapped in pink. And a caption. Her name is Ellie. I named her for the woman I couldn't steal. Be happy, both of you. Allison leaned her head against my shoulder. I leaned mine against hers. The house was empty. The floors were bare. But for the first time in 3 years, it felt like a home. We think that love is a bridge we cross once and forever. But love is water. It changes course. It floods. It disappears underground and resurfaces miles away, in places we didn't plan to build. Victoria stole 3 years, but she also saved a man who was ready to jump. Allison lost a child, but she didn't lose the courage to come back. And Marcus learned that the only thing worse than being late is never arriving at all. The house by the river isn't finished. The floors are bare. The walls are empty. But it stands. And standing, after everything, is enough. If you were Marcus, could you have forgiven Victoria? If you were Allison, would you have returned after losing everything? And if you were Victoria, would you have hidden the letter to save the man you loved? Or given it back and risked losing him? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.